This is the life and times of Ulysses S. Grant. Born Hiram Ulysses Grant on April 27, 1822 in Point Pleasant, Ohio. He grew up on a farm where his father was a tanner. That is where Grant found his love for horses. He did not want to become a tanner like his father, so he enrolled in the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 1839. There his name was mistakenly listed as Ulysses S. Grant and decided to keep it that way. Following graduation at the academy, he was assigned as a second lieutenant and fought in the Mexican-American War. During this time, Grant displayed courage and bravery. After the war, Grant married Julie Dent in 1848. They had 4 children and moved to Missouri. The Civil War began in April 1861. Grant felt it was his duty to re-enter the military. Grant's victory at Fort Donelson was the first victory for the Union in the Civil War. Grant fought in the Battle of Shiloh in 1862, one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War. In December 1862, Grant led his army to victory at the city of Vicksburg, a Confederate stronghold. In October 1863, Grant took command at Chattanooga and was able to overtake the railroads and lead the way to another victory. In 1864, President Abraham Lincoln made him General-in-Chief of the entire Army. Grant led the Union Army against Robert E. Lee in Virginia for over a year, with Grant eventually defeating Lee in the Confederate Army. Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9, 1865. Grant's popularity after the Civil War was so high, he was chosen by the Republican Party as their presidential candidate. He won the presidential election in 1868 and re-elected in 1872. He served 2 terms as president. He even ran for a third but didn't win. He was the youngest president at the time at the age of 46. Grant fought for civil rights of both African Americans and Native Americans. He supported the 15th Amendment, giving the right to all men to vote regardless of race color or whether they were former slaves. He also signed a bill that allowed people of African descent to become U.S. citizens. Grant signed legislation limiting the activities of white terrorist groups like the Ku Klux Klan that used violence to intimidate African Americans. Grant helped to establish the national park system, including the first national park, Yellowstone. In 1871, Grant's administration negotiated the Treaty of Washington with Great Britain, settling disputes over the Civil War as well as northern borders. After his second term, he decided to go on a tour of the world. He spent over 2 years traveling the world, meeting with important world leaders. He met with Queen Victoria in England, the Emperor of Japan, and the Pope at the Vatican. He also visited Russia, China, Egypt, and the Holy Land. Finally returned to the U.S. in 1879. In 1884, Grant was diagnosed with throat cancer. Despite his illness, he worked on his memoirs. After battling cancer for several months, Ulysses S. Grant died on July 23, 1885. The final resting place of President Ulysses S. Grant and his wife Julia is the largest mausoleum in North America, located in New York City. Approximately 90,000 people from around the world donated over $600,000 towards the construction of Grant's tomb. This was the largest public fundraising event at the time. Some facts about Grant. When the word got out that he was smoking a cigar during his famous attack on Fort Donelson, people sent him thousands of cigars to celebrate. He was supposed to be at the theater with Lincoln on the night of his assassination. He struggled with alcohol throughout his life. Grant hated wearing Army uniforms. He had no political experience before becoming president. The S in Grant's name didn't stand for anything. Grant's presidency and service to the United States is forever immortalized on the $50 bill.